You actually go outside in these things?
Do we really have to wear these?
The X-Men costumes have historically had one of the worst reputations in the entire comic book movie canon. But is that really fair? Sure, there's been an awful lot of black leather and black armour.
Does it come in black?
But there's also been way more creative and comic accurate costumes in the franchise than people give them credit for.
Hard to believe this one's fit me.
There's also something to be said for comic book accuracy in general. Is a costume bad just because it doesn't resemble anything that came before? Doesn't the tone, narrative, and context to the movie making alter how these costumes should be considered? And then on top of that, there's this f***ing Deadpool outfit. Pure, unfiltered perfection.
Perfection.
I'm going to look through all of the assorted looks from both the X-Men and their villains across the movie franchise. Where were they treated unfairly? Where were they treated more than fairly? Which costumes came close but missed the mark? Overall, are the X-Men costumes really that bad?
As none of us mutated to endure extreme G-force or being riddled by bullets, I suggest we suit up.
So first up, we of course have the infamous black leather suits from the original X-Men trilogy. These costumes were designed by Louise Mingenbach, and she returned for X-Men 2. And she then came back for X-Men Origins Wolverine, Days of Future Past, and X-Men Apocalypse. So chances are she's probably responsible for costumes that you've loved, and costumes you've hated. In the first movie, they were form-fitting black costumes with most but not all of the recognisable elements. The suits were tweaked for X2, giving the actors more manoeuvrability by making them looser at the forearms and ankles, as well as segmenting the costume into a top half and trousers. The costumes were given more individuality in the sequel, but across the trilogy they all share a more unified style than what we're used to in superhero team-ups today. When X-Men rolled around almost 23 years ago, the only other big budget Marvel superhero was Blade, and his outfit was relatively easy to cook up. Concept art proves that more colourful looks were attempted, but I don't think that would have worked in 2000. In a post-Matrix, post-Blade world, these mutants needed to be taken seriously. Fox did not want to evoke the campy, colourful costumes of the most recent Bat-Fail, Batman and Robin, whereas black leather was all the rage. It's easy to look back on these suits of contempt, but if you think about the time they were made and the context of the movie itself, they seem like a logical conclusion. The idea of costumed superheroes who stop muggers and take your cats down from trees didn't exist in the first X-Men movie. By focusing on the mutant plight and echoing very real forms of prejudice, this mutant world begot a costume style that would be less ostentatious and more grounded. The suits do serve a practical purpose in these movies. Notice how Scott's uniform, whilst not bulletproof, does protect him from Deathstrike's dart gun when everyone else falters. If only he had double tapped her. These costumes are protective and make sense for who they are as a team in this world. They're not a paramilitary group like the Avengers. The fights they engage in during the movies are rare compared to what they actually spend most of their time doing, finding mutants and taking them into their protection. I always like the leather look in terms of the design. That big X across the chest on the male suits, the lines and bumps on the arms and legs, they look great. The little X's on the collars and the back also rock. I like that the characters get little accents of red piping or orange piping, white piping, silver piping. They're all in black, yes, but there's more individuality than at first glance it would seem. Storm has her silver cape and Wolverine even has his pointy stripes. I think those two have the best outfits of this era because they have the most unique looks. The black outfits fit the aesthetic set by the film that is also exemplified in the marketing. There's lots of cold colours, blues, greys, blacks, and lots of metallic shiny silver going on in the first two movies. These black outfits look great amongst the look and feel of X1 and X2. I understand why people don't like these suits. They do come across as repurposed motorcycle leathers, and sometimes the comic references feel like begrudging reparations rather than loving recreations. However, they make sense for the context of the story, they look great amidst all the dimly lit military labs and bases, and for better or worse, they are iconic to that era. Whilst 2006's X-Men The Last Stand doesn't reinvent the costumes too much, they are dropped into a lighter, more jokey and ultimately cheesy tone. Gone is the relative grit and darkness of the first two movies, and gone is the aesthetic that suited those suits. These costumes should have become more individualised as they went on, particularly for the mutants that have spent time with the outfits between movies, and the tone switch in Last Stand would have been the perfect time for this. Narrative-wise, the X-Men are more out in the open and are shown to be publicly defending humans and battling Magneto, so it would have made sense to make these outfits more colourful and more individualistic. The kind of costumes for people that take cats down from trees, you know? Part of the reason why The Last Stand sucks is because it tries to keep itself in the canon of what came before, but the plot and tone are desperately fighting against that. I actually think it would have worked better as a sequel to own that more bombastic tone, and the costumes would have been a great way to do that. Even if they introduced more yellow to look more Grant Morrison, then that could have been a step in the right direction. Plus, the X-Men have become more of a combat presence by the time we get to the third part in the trilogy, so maybe it would have made sense to have higher boots with less loose trousers, akin to what Cap wears. Overall, I think these costumes are way too hated. 2000 Spider-Man and the Fantastic Four had worlds that beckoned to these kind of looks. Both had public personas and want to appear approachable and recognisable. The 2000s X-Men, by and large, work from the shadows, and the whole point is that they face persecution and prejudice. It wouldn't make sense for them to have accurate comic book outfits until the concluding part of the trilogy. If you can look past the matching black and the leather, then you have outfits that are well designed, detailed but not overly textured, and instantly recognisable as that particular iteration of the team. We simply wouldn't have comic accurate looks for characters like Thor and Cap if the X-Men didn't attempt all this stuff first. 2009's X-Men Origins Wolverine kinda gets away with this costume examination because there are basically no costumes. Sure, Deadpool has a pretty generic look in both iterations here, but everyone is basically in clothes or military gear. There's no real superhero outfits, whatever. Everyone looks fine. Even Bracapole, the look is just a symptom of the real problem with that character.
Stryker finally figured out how to shut you up.
Gambit has his coat, he looks fine. Wolverine has his leather jacket, he looks fine. Sabretooth looks cool. Again, whatever.
Never.
2 years later, we got the rushed production that was 2011's X-Men First Class, a movie that had no business being as good as it was.
I've been at the mercy of men just following orders. Never again.
The First Class suits were not designed by Louise Mingenbach, a first for the franchise. In spite of having new designers in Juliana Makovsky and Lisa Tomczyn when Ratner took over for X3, Mingenbach's work was still felt all across that movie, with largely similar designs. Instead, they were designed by Sammy Sheldon, and that creative switch-up echoes the switch-up in the directing chair, as both Matthew Vaughn and Sheldon breathed new life into X-Men movie canon with the look of this movie. Like with almost everything in the movie, the costumes rocked. The 60s setting almost freed the X-Men to be more comic booky. There is clearly less concern about downplaying the colour, and instead it gives way to a predominantly yellow and blue visage that provides a cinematic spin on the team's very first appearance. However, they don't lose that all-important sense of practicality. They're flight suits designed to withstand bullets and extreme G-force, with special adaptations for specific powers. And the idea of individuality is pushed further than in the Singer or Ratner movies. Banshee in particular, with his iconic wings faithfully recreated, looks downright perfect. Havoc keeps his comic book chess piece too, although it is so dumb and hilarious when it falls off and he has to shoot his lasers by himself, you know, to complete his character development. Mr. Xavier, my nipples are sunburnt. When they first revealed Magneto's helmet, I thought it looked absolutely ridiculous. In the movie, both he and Shaw pull it off with style. Again, the period trappings really allowed the costuming to go bolder than ever before in the series. My biggest regret with the franchise is that we didn't get one more X-Men team film before we merged the eras in Days of Future Past. Matthew Vaughn actually suggested this be the case, with Days of Future Past serving as the grand finale to a trilogy. Fox had other ideas, and whilst I loved Days, there's no denying the franchise ran out of steam and didn't know what to do with its younger era after that. But imagine what another go-round of these colourful costumes would have looked like. Imagine if Vaughn went from the 60s comic books to the 70s updates in his First Class sequel. I've always wanted to see these looks given a cinematic attempt, and Vaughn would have been the perfect director to do it. Anyway, 3 years later we got 2014's Days of Future Past. This movie was such a joy at the time. It's funny that everyone is freaking out about the MCU bringing back everybody from Nick Cage to Ben Affleck in Secret Wars, because I feel like Fox actually beat them to the punch there. I was beyond excited to see all the old X-Men cast back in 2014. X-Men 4 was dead, Wolverine had been firmly flung into spin-off territory, and the First Class cast, whilst a loose prequel, really felt like a soft reboot. When it was announced that the X-Men were going to do Terminator and time travel, I was shocked and amazed. It was a chance to see Patrick Stewart, Halle Berry, Elliot Page, Shawn Ashmore, and the rest of the legacy players in a more outlandish and science fiction setting than ever before. I was keenly intrigued by how the costumes would look now they were no longer bound by the leather outfits, although one does make a cameo appearance at the start. Much like First Class, I think Days of Future Past nailed the costumes. In fact, I'd say both movies are tied for best X-Men costume design overall. Whilst other entries nailed specific characters, these movies had the best unifying designs. I know the costumes are still black with only splashes of colour here and there, but it's important to note that flashy costumes didn't make sense in the original movies. It would be even more ridiculous in a post-apocalyptic world where hiding from detection is paramount. I think they harken back to the black leather days, but progress with more colour that makes the outfits more superhero in style, whilst also conforming to the fact that they have been in war and the world has gone to hell. These outfits are the perfect Terminator spin on the cinematic X-Men in my opinion. Xavier gets his hover chair, and both he and Mags look great armoured up, a drastic departure from their original outfits. Bishop might not be as accurate as you might like, but much like Storm, keeping the iconic cape ensures these characters totally nail the feel of their comic book counterparts. Iceman, Colossus, Kitty and the others all have various alterations that don't necessarily speak to any comic book inspiration, but are well designed all the same. I love Iceman's open tank top coat that he's got going on. Wolverine even has his iconic yellow and blue. I know his suit is mostly black and armoured up, but this suit rocks. It takes odes from the comics, but it's its own thing. Sometimes the best combo in an adaptation, a la the Spider-Man PS4 suit with that iconic white spider. I really love the X-Men Days of Future Past Wolverine suit, and I wish we saw him, fighting Sentinels in it, because he's one of the only future characters that doesn't do that at all. The concept art did reveal a whole host of designs that definitely make you ponder what if, including an even more colourful Logan design and tons of Iceman looks that are decidedly more sci-fi, but all in all I think these costumes worked. They're all used in two of the best X-Men action scenes of all time, involving a fight with the indestructible Sentinels at the beginning and the end. The Rogue Cut even sees a team of Iceman, Magneto and Xavier raiding the now repurposed X-Mansion to rescue Rogue. It's awesome to see superheroes in a world where everything has gone to hell. I never would have guessed back during the X2 days that we would get to see any of this. The modern day characters all mainly wear clothes, although Quicksilver's silver jacket is notably cool. The only character in the 70s who gets a superhero get-up of any sort is Magneto. I have to say this is my single favourite Magneto look in the series. I don't think they ever dropped the ball with him, but this outfit just outshines all the other candidates. The colour scheme is perfect, I love the body armour and the finish to the helmet, the cape looks great, and he looks ready to throw down.
So much for being a survivor.
Where these costumes really start to actively fuck up in my opinion is after Days. By the time we got to 2016's X-Men Apocalypse, we were doing the Apocalypse character, one of the most outlandish villains to adapt to screen. We'd just had a movie with time travel and giant robots, the old tone established in the first two films that really fit the black leather, that tone was gone. We'd entered a more comic booky post-Avengers X-Men movie world. This was the time to finally do colourful X-Men superhero outfits and do them with pride. Instead, we got flight suits. Armoured black flight suits. Again? There was no rhyme or reason to this. There was absolutely no need to go back to black outfits. The concept art even showed the team in colourful get-ups in the actual action of the movie, not just at the end. So somewhere along the line, I guess it was decided that they should have black armour. Again?
Hey guys. Flight suits.
To add insult to injury, the villainous characters all got pretty accurate looks. Psylocke in particular, she looked ripped straight out of the comics. That was awesome, and it was sincerely frustrating she didn't switch sides and keep that outfit as a fully fledged X-Man. She's one of my favourite characters in the comics, and I'm actually so shocked that they did it this comic book accurate. And it looks cool, it works for the film. This CGI is freaking awful though. Magneto's outfit, whilst not as brilliant as the one in Days, was a welcome addition. The Egyptian stylings from Apocalypse and the bolder red aesthetic suited the character and his position in the story. I'd have loved to see the Days outfit again, but this was just fine. Storm and Angel's looks were nothing special, but at least they had colours to them other than black and were in keeping with the Horseman aesthetic. I know this is a hot take, but I don't think Apocalypse looks anywhere near as bad as people made out at the time. The Ivan Ooze comparison was all born out of this one publicity still where all the characters were bathed in purple light. He didn't really look like that in the actual movie. The blue tones and the detailings are nice. Yeah, it doesn't look as comic book accurate as it could have, and in fact there was some concept art that was released that looked way closer to Apocalypse from the comics, but I don't think this is necessarily bad. As with the first two movies, I think this look suits the tone that they're going for. Obviously, a more comic accurate look would be welcome in the future, but considering it was the first time they did Apocalypse, I don't think it's anywhere near as bad as people make out. The real problem with Apoc's look is his size. He's supposed to be more like Thanos in stature, a villain that towers over people. Oscar Isaac is only 5'8", he's kinda too slight for the role. I think this just shows how good a casting like Michael Shannon as Zod is. He's 6'4". Before you even put the outfit on him, he's towering over Superman. I get that you can effectively fake heights in movies. Tom Hardy is the same size as Isaac, and he looks massive in Rises, but why fake it when you could just get a legitimately huge actor who can carry the weight of a performance like this in a compelling manner? Anyway, let's talk about the costumes you really want to hear about, the Danger Room final costumes. These suits are largely awesome. This is hands down Cyclops' best look in the entire series, a faithful recreation of the animated series look, which proves it would work so well in live action. Nightcrawler's look apes his classic style with the red shoulders, and Mystique finally rocks that white middle strip. Quicksilver's look is fun and I like the colouring. Beast has a pretty nothing look, but to be honest, how are you going to top Kelsey Grammer's suit? Jean's is pretty bland and there's concept art of her in a more animated series look, so I'm baffled they didn't go with that. Storm's outfit under Apocalypse is actually better than this one. Why didn't we get her in that iconic white jumpsuit? Overall, some of these suits look really cool and some of them look just fine, but the salient point is that they collectively stand head and shoulders above the black flight suits. Why did they unveil these suits at the very end? I hate it when movies do that. It's basically saying, we know you'd like to see this design choice, but we don't have full faith in it, so we're going to go the lazy, tried and tested route until the final scene, so that it doesn't matter if you end up hating it. Ray needed that gold saber the whole movie, the X-Men deserved to suit up the whole movie. All could have been forgiven if they'd have kept these suits around for the next instalment, but instead, they were simply never seen again. Louise Minghenbach's most unique work is found in Apocalypse, ultimately. I think it shows that whilst yes, she was a big proponent of black leather, her work became more comic book focused and more colourful as the series went on. Being the only designer to keep coming back across a period of 16 years also shows how much her costumes were products of their time. As superhero movies evolved, so did her costumes. Of course, in some ways, Apocalypse can't let go of the past, it's beholden to the black suits, and that is a shame, but it's not necessarily her fault that the costumes at the very end weren't in the whole movie. And then by the time we got to 2019's X-Men Dark Phoenix, the X-Men had done away with those colourful outfits at the end of the last movie and resorted back to something much simpler and much more functional, and there was a little bit more colour this time, but it is basically a regression back to what we had in 2000. They just straight up went the Grant Morrison route, which, as I said earlier, would have been great in Last Stand, but by Dark Phoenix, you just came out with those awesome suits at the end of Apocalypse. What gives? You can tell from seeing these suits in the original X-Men Mansion basement, a set that has remained unchanged amidst so many continuity sinkholes, that these suits would have indeed worked with the look and feel of The Last Stand. But here, 13 years later in Dark Phoenix, it was far too little too late. These costumes felt like a regression instead of a bold new look. They should have just tweaked the Apocalypse costumes, honestly.
I had a change of heart.
I don't really want to cover the Wolverine and Logan because there's no X-Men outfits and this isn't really a video about the costume design in general, otherwise we'd be retreading a bunch of old ground in my X-Men First Class video because Fassbender's drip is literally breaking the multiverse. The Wolverine, fine. Logan, the GOAT. Nothing to do with the quality of them, but unlike Deadpool there's no X-Men outfits to speak of. Well. other than the yellow Wolverine outfit from a deleted scene in the Wolverine. This looks super comic accurate and it's a well designed translation to the big screen, but since we never got to see Hugh wear it, it is hard to say how good this costume really was. It's also hard to ascertain how much of this suit was actually made, because it could just be the bits we can see, without Hugh doing fittings and such. It probably would have been redesigned for the next movie if it stayed in this one. It's a shame it wasn't used in the end. When Logan came out, I was excited by the first trailer, but my first thought when it ended was, oh, I guess we're not doing the yellow suit then. Of course, that was okay because of the direction they went in with the movie, but now that the cat is out of the bag with Huey in Deadpool 3, stop edging us and give us Jacked Man in all his yellow glory. Imagine if they pull it off and we see the two single greatest X-Men outfits together on screen. This is of course because the current greatest outfit in the whole entire franchise, of course, belongs to Deadpool. This is the crown jewel of the X-Men movie costumes, hands down. This is insanely good. It still blows my mind in 2023, all these years later, just to see such a pitch-perfect version of Deadpool. It was just something many fans thought we were never going to get. Look at this thing. Wow. After the hilariously off-base rendition of the character in the first Wolverine movie, it's clear that everyone from director Tim Miller to the concept team to costume designer Angus Struthy were dead set on getting Deadpool's look just right this time. It's safe to say they nailed it, with one of the best translated comic book costumes ever on film. The colour is bold, no black costumes for Deadpool, the mask is perfect, and it was a wise choice to have Paul's eyes enhanced through CGI. He needs to be able to emote through that mask, more so than Spider-Man. It's a perfect balance between looking sturdy and flexible. I cannot imagine a single person out there hates this costume. Even if you're not hugely into Deadpool, I'm not, you can still appreciate just how well done this costume is. In fact, if you hate this costume, please comment, because I don't believe any of you really exist. I don't. What's mental about this costume is that the guy who spearheaded it also designed the 2004 Halle Berry Catwoman outfit. I think this just shows how ultimately talented each and every one of the designers were for all of these movies, how important the concept artists play in these designs, and how much they might succeed or fail based on the collective creative visions of themselves, the directors, and everybody else involved. Because you cannot look at me and say this guy's a hack for creating that Catwoman suit when he also created this. The guest X-Men also look great. This is the most comic-inspired Colossus we've ever seen, and it really shows just how much of a difference some proper colour makes to the standard black X-Men look. Negasonic Teenage Warhead's New Mutants look also excels. I'd honestly be game for a team of costumes with bold yellow and black as the only colour combo. Think less Dark Phoenix, more Ultimate X-Men. I want them X-Men Legends looks, guys. Kurt Swanson and Bart Mueller took over the costume design for Deadpool 2. A lot of the costumes in Deadpool 2 are carryovers, but continue the hot streak set by the first. In terms of new stuff, we get a fairly accurate Juggernaut, which looks much better than the woeful design in X-Men The Last Stand, although it's a shame movie Juggernaut is still allergic to burgundy. Cable looks great, but honestly, this Kyle Reese looking motherfucker would be hard to fuck up. Overall, in terms of evoking the comics, the best outfits are Deadpool, Psylocke, and First Class Magneto. But just because some of these designs have struck out on their own, doesn't mean they're necessarily bad. A lot of the looks across the franchise have suited the tone of the stories being told, and it's often easy to forget that the X-Men spearheaded a lot of elements we now take for granted, particularly in the MCU. You wouldn't have your colourful outfits today without those black leather duds. I think there's plenty of great outfits across the films, and the general reputation they have for being terribly designed just isn't a fair analysis in my opinion. When they don't work, yeah, they can kinda crash and burn depending on your tastes. I understand hating the black leather, but I also think that those suits get way overhated considering the context. And in the end, you got Deadpool. At the end of all that costume evolution, after all the mistakes, you still got Deadpool, and that's a win.
It's over.
Since Xavier got his animated series wheelchair in Multiverse of Madness, I think it's safe to assume that any Fox-Man returning in Deadpool 3 to Secret Wars will get a new bespoke look. I doubt we'll see the Fox-Men turn up in black leather. Kevin Feige knows how to tap into fanboy desire better than almost anyone in Hollywood, for better and for worse, so I can see the returning players being treated to some of the most comic-inspired and badass looking suits we've ever had. Wolverine is all but confirmed for that yellow, baby. What do you think? Is the black leather overhated? Not hated enough? Do the looks of characters like Psylocke and Deadpool negate all the times they were off kilter? Will Hugh Jackman suit up finally? Let me know in the comments below. I'm about to go see Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania literally right after I finish this video tonight, so I guess I'll let you know if it's any good very soon. Hopefully it doesn't suck. Please don't suck. A big thank you to my full fat tier patron, Dr. Chike. If you'd like to donate money to my Patreon, you can find me at patreon.com/fullfatvideos. If you'd like to find me on Instagram, you can find me at full_fat_videos. And if you'd like to find me on Twitter, you can find me at fullfatvideos.